I am going to have one right now. And look, see, they're like layered. They look so good. And because, like, remember when I was saying when you make the mint layer, it's gonna smell like toothpaste because of the amount of mint. But because there's that decadent fudge brownie on the bottom, it it doesn't smell like a toothpaste brownie. I promise you. Mm. Mm. It's so good. I used to work weekends during college at a bed and breakfast. And I think if you look back at some of my older recipes, you'll find one that is an orange pecan French toast. And that was one of those things that we would make as part of the breakfast offering. But one of the other things that we would make is what we're making today, which is my mint. I don't know if I want to, which I want to say first. It's a fudge mint triple layer brownie, or it's a mint fudge triple layer brownie. I think mint fudge sounds better than fudge mint. I've got the first layer already prepared, and they've already been chilling in the fridge, because this is the only problem with this recipe, is that each layer is super simple to make, but you have to let each layer chill completely before you put the next layer on. Otherwise it gets kind of mixed up. So I've already made the brownie layer, and the brownie layer is super simple. Just buy the cheapest, absolute least expensive fudge brownie mix you can buy at the store. Doesn't matter what brand, it has to be a fudge brownie mix though, not the cake brownie. The one I used for today's recipe, I bought at the store, it was like $1.50 a box. So, so we're gonna start with the second layer, which is the mint layer. This is 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, just regular old powdered sugar. To that, you're going to add 3 tablespoons of softened butter, not melted and not cold out of the fridge. You want to just kind of leave this out until it's completely soft. And kind of sticky. And you're also going to get some heavy whipping cream. I think there's 2 kinds of whipping cream. There's like regular whipping cream and heavy whipping cream. I've always used the heavy whipping cream. If you can't find heavy, I think the regular whipping cream will be just fine. I think that the heavy whipping cream is just more decadent. So, going to add 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. And then you're going to, where is my teaspoon spoon? You're going to get mint extract. So you can use peppermint if you want. It'll be a little bit sharper. I just like to use the regular pure mint extract rather than peppermint, but that's just a personal preference. And you are going to add 3 teaspoons. Mint extract, and because I've already made a batch of this before, this bottle's already empty. I usually like starting with a fork just to kind of cut the butter into the powdered sugar. I'm not sure why I'm wearing a black top today, although I tend to wear black most of the time, but we will see and keep our fingers crossed that I don't get powdered sugar all over my shirt. Now you're not adding any other liquid to this, so in the beginning it's going to look like you're not going to mix all this together very well, but trust me, the powdered sugar is going to absorb the heavy cream and the peppermint extract, and the butter is just going to cream this all together. Then when you get to kind of a halfway or 3/4 of the way point, you want to take your spatula and remove the filling from your fork. And you're going to blend the rest of these. Now, if your bowl moves around too much, an easy trick is to just get a towel and pop it on a towel. It'll make it a little bit easier, and plus then it won't make a whole lot of noise and slide around on your countertop. Doesn't have to be a wet towel, just a regular towel will do. And yay, I managed to do this without getting powdered sugar all over myself, which is nice. And also actually rare, because I actually get powdered sugar or flour on me all the time. So you're kind of making kind of like a buttercream frosting, and that's kind of the consistency you're gonna get. And it is awfully thick, so it's a little bit of elbow grease. And when that's all mixed together, take your fork and do the reverse of what you were doing with your spatula earlier, which is remove the frosting from the spatula. So now that we have this filling, let me move this out of the way. I'm gonna go ahead and bring up the brownie pan. So you're gonna follow the instructions for a 9x9 cake pan. Bake your chewy fudge brownie out of a box or bag. Some of those companies make them in bags. And go ahead and bake it as per box instructions. And then you're gonna put it in your fridge for, I don't know, I tend to leave it in overnight. I tend to this is like a week-long project, or at least a 2-day project, where I make the brownies the night before, put them in the fridge and let them completely chill out, so that they're cold on the bottom, cold everywhere. Because the thing about this is, because it's a buttercream frosting, if you allow this to hit a hot brownie, it will melt, and you don't want that. Because once it melts, it's kind of hard to get it to, like, even if you put it back in the fridge, it never kind of goes back to this consistency. It becomes kind of this weird separated butter mint thing, which I don't recommend. I like using a fork to just kind of do the initial pushing off to the corners. And if when you move this around, you kind of pick up the top part of the brownie, that's okay, because we have a third layer that will correct any mistakes that you make in putting this frosting on top of the brownie mix. Now, if you want to mimic a real Andes mint, you can actually add a couple of drops of green food coloring to this mint buttercream layer. I don't. I tend to kind of like just kind of the white mint layer. And as I said a little bit earlier, each layer goes in the fridge and sits. So you want this buttercream to set into a solid before you put the final layer on, because the final layer is a little bit warm. So let me go ahead and move this. And I've actually made another batch. Sometimes you get a little bit of the brownie topping kind of mixed in with the buttercream, and that's okay. So here I've got 2 ounces of, I'm using a extra dark chocolate chip. You can use bittersweet. I don't recommend milk chocolate, because I think the brownie and the mint layers are already kind of sweet enough. So you want to kind of lean closer to like a bitter or bittersweet chocolate. And to this, so just 2 ounces, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter, 1 teaspoon of good vanilla. So I have a good Mexican vanilla here. Vanilla is one of those things that's kind of like garlic. If it says 1 teaspoon, I just mean, oh, okay, I'm just going to add like a splash. I tend not to measure it. Add a little bit more. And this goes into the microwave because this is it's a small amount, right? For me, it's not worth getting a double boiler out for something this size. I would just throw it into the microwave for like 10 seconds, then see how it's doing. And if it needs an extra 5 or 10 seconds, do that. Don't put it on 30 and walk away because it'll burn. So just do usually between 15 and 20 seconds is all I need for this. So let me go and do this in the microwave and I will come back and stir it all up. So because today is kind of a chilly day, it took like 25 seconds. But basically, if you're looking through the window of your microwave and the butter melts, that's kind of a good indication for you to pull it out. Especially if you are using room temperature butter. If you use butter that's straight from the fridge, it might take longer, but then you risk the chocolate burning. So if you're gonna have your butter out to make the buttercream frosting, you might as well just use the butter from that. So, and don't worry, it will mix together. Chocolate like this will seize up, I think is the term, if you add any water. So just because this is chocolate chips and butter, which is a fat, this will just blend into a really nice smooth chocolate sauce. Now, if you're a professional chocolate person, I think this is called a ganache. So, but I might be wrong. If you're a chocolatier, you need to correct me. I will not be offended. But the butter makes this very glossy top, which is so nice. Okay, so just a reminder, this is not the buttercream frosting brownie layer thing that I just made. This has been chilling for at least, I want to say 2 hours. I mean, it's a hard, because the butter solidified, right? And the heavy cream also helped all of this kind of turn into this like solid peppermint layered mass. And the reason I am talking right now is because I'm waiting for this to kind of get to body temperature. Because again, even though that's cold, if you put a hot layer on it, it will start melting that butter. And then when you try to turn this into a layer, you'll end up getting this like peppermint swirly thing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but after all, the name of this brownie is triple layer. So you want to actually have a third layer. So, okay, so now that this is like close to body temperature, you are going to just pour this all over the top. And then you can slide this around. This is kind of fun. You can use your spatula to move this, but you can also just kind of slide it around first too. And see, because that buttercream layer is solid and cold, you'll see like some of it poke through, like you can see through it, the chocolate when you're moving this around, but it's not going to melt and turn into like a swirl. And honestly, I think that's the most difficult part about these mint fudge triple layer brownies is the waiting for each layer to chill out. But, you know, might be a lesson. There's a life lesson in that. My mouth is already starting to water. And I'm not even really a big chocolate person, but I do like Andes mints, so. Okay. Now you can't lick the spoon after making brownies because it's got raw eggs in it before you put it in the oven, but this is chocolate, so. It's like extra, it's so good, extra dark chocolate. Okay, I'm being distracted by chocolate. This goes into the fridge and it can stay anywhere from an hour to overnight until the chocolate layer solidifies. So let me clear everything up and I will bring this out and we'll cut these into squares. We'll be right back. So this pan and the other one that I also made have both been sitting in the fridge for about an hour or so. So the chocolate layer has gotten hard. The next complicated thing, which is kind of not so complicated, is cutting these. And it's one of the reasons why I tend to use, and we did back at the bed and breakfast as well, these disposable aluminum cake pans. Because you're going to take a knife to it, you don't really want to cut a cake pan that is like non-stick and you use it for other stuff. This is also a great way to give these as gifts because you can actually just send it just like a pan. So a little bit of parchment paper just so I don't get my hands all over it, and also to kind of prevent just a little bit from the warmth of my hands from melting the chocolate. So I'm going to try to turn this out onto a cutting board. Now I'm going to take a butter knife and at least cut around. And if you made the brownies, the initial brownie layer properly and greased your pan first, this whole thing is a little bit easier. But obviously the buttercream and the chocolate layers sometimes stick to the sides, and especially on those corners. So yeah, so get your knife all the way around and give it like a little lift, make sure everything comes off. Set that aside. Get your parchment paper. Upside down. Woo, look at that! Amazing. Ooh, it even made a little indentation of the mark that's on the, see what I mean? The chocolate would have melted. It actually did melt a little bit, but now I don't have it all over my hands. I just have a little bit of grease from the bottom of the baking pan, which I can just quickly wipe off. Now all I have to do is cut these into squares. So when we would do this at the bed and breakfast, we always cut the edges off because look, some people love the edges of brownies. I am one of those people. It kind of becomes like a brownie brittle. It's a little bit chewier, a little bit crunchier. But in terms of putting these out as like pillow mints or after dinner mints, you kind of want to avoid those edges because it kind of, the texture is different from everything else. So usually just cut off the edge pieces. And also this is the part that becomes the snack for all of us employees that were working at the bed and breakfast. With pillow mints, and because these mints in particular are pretty rich, you're using a fudge brownie mix. I actually used a dark chocolate fudge brownie mix. And you've got that dark chocolate on top, and you've got this kind of rich minty layer in between. We don't serve these in the same kind of brownie, big old squares. We just want to make them into like little dinner mint sizes. So half, third, third. It's almost easier just to kind of make these guidelines first. And cut these into long sections. And there you have it, mint fudge triple layer brownies. I'm gonna go ahead and put a couple on this plate. And usually when we would put these out, we would put them out on like a little fancy plate and just put out two. And when I give them as gifts, I will put them in like a little, like a cupcake cup and put two in each square so that everybody knows that one portion is two or two to share. And they're so good. but they are also very decadent. So if you have more than two, you will have a sugar coma, which in hindsight, I think it's what helps you sleep. So maybe that's why we left it out as pillow mints, because you would have like a little sugar high at the end of your night after dinner. Your breath would be a little bit mintier, and then you would just like drift off to sleep. So maybe that's why they're pillow mints. I am going to have one right now. And look, see, they're like layered. They look so good. And because, like, remember when I was saying when you make the mint layer, it's gonna smell like toothpaste because of the amount of mint. But because there's that decadent fudge brownie on the bottom, it it doesn't smell like a toothpaste brownie. I promise you. Mm. Mm. It's so good. It, the whole thing is chewy because we cut off those like more crunchier kind of brownie middle edges. Um, the chew, but it kind of melts in your mouth. You're left with the the dark chocolate, but also this mint that's not overpowering, surprisingly. Um, I would have this with a cup of hot tea or coffee, although coffee might be a little strong in terms of caffeine for end of the night. So maybe um, I wouldn't have this with a hot cocoa or hot chocolate because I think that's a little too much chocolate, but that's just me. If you're a chocolate addict, if that's your thing, this might actually be really good with a cup of hot cocoa, with a little less sugar than usual.